The Apostle John's New Testament Revelation Unfolded, Section 10, Chapter 16. Verse 1. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven servants, Go your ways, and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. Because the people will not seek wisdom and follow the simple gospel of do unto others what you would have them do unto you, the plagues will begin to torment and annoy them, as thus it is sung in the song of Moses the servant of God, If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God, then the Lord will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Deuteronomy 28 verses 58 to 59. Verse 2. And the first went his way, and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell noisome and grievous sores upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. No prophet could more eloquently describe what John is alluding to in this verse than Isaiah. A sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters, they have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backward. Why should ye be stricken any more? Ye will revolt more and more. The whole head is sick, and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even unto the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds, and bruises, and putrefying sores. They have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. Isaiah 1 verses 4 to 6. Throughout the Old Testament, sore is used as an adjective or an adverb to describe a condition such as being sore afraid. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and, behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. Exodus 14 verse 10, or being sore distressed. Moreover, the children of Ammon passed over Jordan to fight also against Judah, and against Benjamin, and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was sore distressed. Judges 10 verse 9, or being sore athirst, and he was sore athirst, and called on the Lord, and said, Thou hast given this great deliverance into the hand of thy servant, and now shall I die for thirst, and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? Judges 15 verse 18. The sores mentioned in this verse have nothing to do with actual abrasions or lesions on the skin, but all to do with the things that annoy, irritate, offend, and distress those who are constantly worrying about how to make money today, how they are going to make more money tomorrow, and pine over the money they spent yesterday on the things that moth corrupts, clothes, and all the other things which thieves break through and steal. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Matthew 6 verses 19 to 21. Though not intended by John as physical ailments, those who have the mark of the beast and worship his image will also experience other sores, which annoy and disrupt their happiness, such as cancer, diabetes, and many other diseases caused by poor diet and lack of exercise, exacerbated by worshiping the beast. He who has gotten the victory over the beast will not feel the affects of the noisome pestilence, as he establishes upon his hands the work of the Lord by doing unto others. The servant in this verse has poured out his vial, and sings in harmony with the psalmist, Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands establish thou it. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fleeth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Psalms 90 verse 16 through 91:6. Verse 3. And the second servant poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. Those who do not understand the gospel of Christ and do not possess an eternal perspective will not understand the intent for which the gospel is given. Their works become dark, as the blood of a dead man, and give no life to them, whereas the gospel of Christ and its intent, his pure blood which is red and life-giving, gives eternal life to the body, and that it can assure us peace and happiness forever. How much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? Hebrews 9 verse 14. Forasmuch as ye know that ye were not redeemed with corruptible things, as silver and gold, from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. Seeing ye have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit unto unfeigned love of the brethren, see that ye love one another with a pure heart fervently. 1 Peter 1 verses 18 to 19, 22. John presents this servant pouring out his vial upon the sea, wherein every living soul dies. This represents everyone upon the earth. See previous commentary on the significance of the sea, being dead, because their works do not bring a life of peace and happiness as promised by obeying the gospel of Christ, the red and pure blood, but are dark like the blood of a dead man. Verse 4. And the third servant poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they also became as the blood of a dead man. The rivers and fountains of waters are the source of quenching human thirst for knowledge and understanding. These represent secular leaders, popes, priests, bishops, prophets, pastors, evangelists, spiritual gurus, therapists, motivational speakers, or anyone who presents him or herself as one from whom others may obtain knowledge and inspiration. Usually for a price, these rivers and fountain of waters appease the thirst of their followers by virtue of their worldly degrees and honors, or by subtle manipulation, which makes one think their thirst is quenched, only to awaken the next day still parched and thirsty. Seldom is counsel drawn from these deep wells full of the blood of a dead man that leads an individual to understand that the kingdom of God is within, and no other can lead a person to this kingdom of peace and tranquility. If the people were led to the simple and light burden of the gospel of Jesus Christ, these rivers and fountain of waters would no longer be necessary. The only well from which one needs draw for understanding and inspiration is the one mentioned by Christ, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. John 4 verse 14. Verse 5. And I heard the servant who poured out his vial upon these waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art, and wast, and shalt be, because thou hast judged them by their works. In this verse, John further expounds upon the corrupted waters by proclaiming that the counsel and commandments of the eternal God, O Lord, which art, and wast, and shalt be, are proper and righteous. Withholding his intervention from the people, pouring out of his wrath, is directly linked to their works. The greater the heed given to the commandments of God, the more his mysteries are revealed. Those who give no heed to his commandments are given a lesser portion of understanding until they know nothing concerning the mysteries of God. When they know nothing concerning his mysteries, they, the frogs, see verse 13, must seek to quench their thirst for knowledge and understanding from the sources available to them, rivers and fountains overflowing with the blood of a dead man. The concept of gaining more understanding by complying with the gospel of Jesus Christ is comparable to freeing the mind and allowing thoughts to process without the restrictions of worry and stress. In essence, Christ's counsels can be summed up as, don't worry, be happy. Little children are happy because they have no worry of what they will eat or drink or where they will lie down come nightfall. They do not worry about whether they are better than or as good as everyone else. They have no worries about accomplishing vain goals and are completely satisfied playing alone or with other little children who share their uncluttered minds. The older they become, the more experiences they gain from a world filled with grown children who worry about everything except what truly makes them happy, being who they were in the beginning, little children. Therefore, the more worries and stresses we have in our lives, the less we understand about reality and happiness, the mysteries of God. Because we lack happiness, we are convinced that we must seek it from others we assume have the authority and ability to help us find it. These are the rivers and fountains of waters described by John. Verse 6. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. The people were not the ones that killed Christ and the prophets. The masses do not have a problem seeking within for peace, without having to perform certain ordinances or pay money to others to get it. The rivers and fountains of waters, the they to which John refers in this verse, lose their honor and glory when confronted by true saints and prophets of God. They have every reason to rid themselves of their competition, either by physically murdering them or spiritually shedding their blood by causing the people to reject their message. Because the people would rather drink blood from the corrupted waters, they do not deserve to understand the mysteries of God or receive His intervention in their lives. Thus, they are worthy to have the vial full of the wrath of God poured out upon them. Verse 7. And I heard another voice out of the altar say, Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgments. This voice came from out of the altar, which represents the place where people present their works upon the earth in mortality. The prophet who is upon the earth during the times these plagues are tormenting and annoying the world, testifies by his works, voice, that the people are not listening to truth, but instead are appeasing their thirst for knowledge by drinking corrupted water. This prophet was given the power to provide the cup from which people could drink the pure water mentioned by Christ, for whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because ye belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. Mark 9 verse 41. Verse 8. And the fourth servant poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. Two questions have plagued, annoyed, and confounded the so-called great minds of the human race. First, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Secondly, why did the human race exist for thousands of years without discovering how to use electricity and other forms of energy to serve the needs of humankind? Why, in only a few hundred years of harnessing and using this power, does our world now change so drastically every few years? Was Democritus, the Greek philosopher who postulated the existence of the atom circa 500 BCE, much less intelligent than Albert Einstein? Or perhaps both were fools compared with a true understanding of the mysteries of God? The first question was figuratively answered by John in verse 5 of this chapter, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art, and wast, and shalt be. There have always been chickens, there have always been eggs, there have always been God's question answered. The second question was answered in the commentary of Revelation 13 verse 14, but is further expounded on in this verse. The sun represents knowledge or an understanding, fire/light, of the power of God. This power is given to the world without the guidance and intervention of God, the wrath poured from the vial upon the sun. The children of God have been allowed in these final times to play with fire without adult supervision. This is so they will learn by their own experience that it burns, and when it does, it hurts. Verse 9. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, who hath power over these plagues, but they repented not to give him glory. The environments of the world are being destroyed because of the great advancements in technology and science, great heat, the human race is using to gratify their lusts. But far more devastating is the fact that these technologies cause people to become more and more selfish, because now a person can sit home, earn their money, be entertained, and not worry about what is happening to a neighbor living 10 feet away divided by a white picket fence. Giving glory to God, as previously mentioned, is nothing more or less than loving your neighbor as yourself. For the most part, even when we love one another, we isolate ourselves behind our picket fences and blaspheme his name by not doing his works, loving all of his children as we love the few that we claim to love. Though these wonderful technological advancements could save our lives and bring equality and more happiness to the world, we use them in ways that go against the gospel of Jesus Christ. Therefore, even though we are being scorched by this great heat, having this great knowledge, we repent not to give God glory. Furthermore, by doing it God's way, we would have power over these plagues. Isaiah uses the same figurative expressions to depict the comfort given to those who follow the Lord. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither shall the heat nor sun smite them, for he that hath mercy on them shall lead them, even by the springs of water shall he guide them. Isaiah 49 verse 10. Verse 10. And the fifth servant poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain. Those who pursue the selfish course of the American dream disregard all tenets of the gospel of equality. This dream is exactly what it is, a dream. In order to dream this way, the world has been pacified and lulled to sleep into carnal security. Once the vial of the wrath of God is poured out upon the earth, those who keep us awake are silenced. For the Lord hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes, the prophets and your rulers, the seers hath he covered. Isaiah 29 verse 10. After the establishment of the United States and its capitalistic economical principles, the entire world followed suit, either by the sheer necessity to survive or by force. In the next chapter, 17, John gives an even greater explanation of the things he is presenting here. He is shown the other nations of the earth, 10 horns, who are of one mind, and shall give their power and strength and their kingdom unto the beast. See Revelation 17 verses 13 and 17. This beast sits upon the sea of humanity, and has thus established its seat upon the earth. The effects of the seat of the beast have caused his kingdom to be full of darkness, and in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. Isaiah 5 verse 30. The correct English definition for the word gnawed used here by John is the intransitive verb to cause somebody constant anxiety or distress. Being in pursuit of the dream, and in all aspects of a capitalistic economy, the ability to outsmart, outthink, and outspeak, tongue, one's neighbor is essential to success. However, in doing so, an atmosphere of anxiety and stress, pain, is created as we try to outsucceed each other. Well did Jeremiah prophesy. And they bend their tongues like their bow for lies, but they are not valiant for the truth upon the earth, for they proceed from evil to evil, and they know not me, saith the Lord. Take ye heed every one of his neighbor, and trust ye not in any brother, for every brother will utterly supplant, and every neighbor will walk with slanders. And they will deceive every one his neighbor, and will not speak the truth. They have taught their tongue to speak lies, and weary themselves to commit iniquity. Thine habitation is in the midst of deceit. Through deceit they refuse to know me, saith the Lord. Jeremiah 9 verses 3-6. Verse 11. And blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, but still they repented not of their deeds. Isaiah presents what John is describing in this verse, like this: And when they shall say unto you, Seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep, and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God? For the living to the dead? To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. And they shall pass through it, hardly bestead and hungry, and it shall come to pass, that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves, and curse their king and their God, and look upward. And they shall look unto the earth, and behold trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and they shall be driven to darkness. Isaiah 8 verses 19-22. In these latter times, humans have little need for a God they cannot see, hear, touch, or experience. They use their belief in God to assuage their inner longings, to make sense out of a world gone amok. The sale of self-help books, familiar spirits, which teach a person about self-help instead of how to help others less fortunate, dominates the book markets. These are some of the false prophets of whom John writes. They set themselves up as one trained in the ministration of effective catharsis that relieves one of their pains and their sores. Their emotional fix lasts about the week their fee covers, after which one must return and pay more money for an additional week of a temporary feel-good-about-myself sensation. If one does not have a therapist, wizards that peep, he or she is considered in denial, and all the more in need of one therapist. See other therapists. Pure and lasting happiness is nowhere to be found in most of these attempts to help the self, as is evident every day, as hate increases and love waxes cold. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Matthew 24 verses 10-12. People cannot see that the only solution to their problems is found in forgiveness, love for neighbor and enemy, and treating each other as they would want to be treated. When they do these things, they find happiness. However, the happiness is short-lived when convinced by the beast that happiness is not in how your neighbor is doing, but in how you are doing. Therefore, in spite of the obvious, still they repented not of their deeds. Verse 12. And the sixth servant poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. When God makes no intervention into our lives, wrath of God poured out of the vial, there is no revelation from heaven, rain. When there is no rain, rivers dry up. The great river Euphrates was mentioned and explained in the commentary on Revelation 9 verse 14. The city of Babylon, situated next to the Euphrates River, has been used by prophets to describe the great worldliness and wickedness of humankind. After many years of following the course of the beast, the course of the river Euphrates, and also the king's highway that leads to the river Euphrates mentioned below, without divine intervention, wrath from the vial, which would have us treat each other appropriately, the economic stability of the world and its ability to obtain the American dream will literally dry up. It will become more challenging for a person to achieve the illusory dream and acquire the material possessions for which the heart longs. Means of income will become harder and harder to come by as technology replaces the laborer with machines and robots. No longer will human life be valued as it once was. Human beings who die in wars on one side will be considered heroes, and the enemy merely expendable casualties of war. The way of life and the standard of living the human race is accustomed to, and the source of its leisure and abundance, will literally dry up. John uses a simple expression to represent why the water thereof was dried up. In order that a way might be prepared to help those who are seeking the Christ child, the one the dragon was ready to devour upon birth, material possessions and the ability to acquire them must be inhibited sufficiently to help cause a change of heart. One is either seeking for the things of the earth, or seeking to serve God. Ye cannot serve God and mammon, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Matthew 6 verses 21 to 24, John contrasts the kings of the east in this verse with the kings of the earth and of the whole world in verse 14. One represents those who allow righteousness to rule over them or be their king, and the other represents those who allow mammon to rule over them. Anciently, there existed trade routes of vital importance to the commerce of the Middle East. They began in Egypt and led to the Euphrates River. One was called via maris, meaning the way of the sea, and according to John's figurative expressions, the way of the people of the earth, and the other was called the King's Highway. Merchants would carry their merchandise along these routes to the Euphrates, where they would float their wares down to Babylon. The ancient merchants' version of the American dream was dependent upon the river. If it were to ever dry up, that would be the end of their income, or at least it would make it much harder for them to make their exchanges. John uses the reference of the kings of the east, wise men who came from the east in search of the prophesied Christ child destined to save the world, as his figurative expression of those who are seeking to comply with the gospel of Christ. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. Matthew 2 verses 1 to 2. The way to live the gospel of Jesus Christ is cleared and prepared before us as the things of the world and its desires are dried up. As a person begins to see the futility in finding happiness in the things of the world, one's heart is prepared that it might begin to seek for the things that truly bring happiness, loving others as one does oneself. Verse 13. And because the water was dried up, I saw 3 unclean spirits like unto frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Frogs live in or near bodies of water that give them life. When the water is dried up, frogs seek out other bodies of water to sustain them. In verse 4, John has presented the rivers and fountains of water as corrupted with blood. These polluted waters come forth from the mouths of religious, secular, and other spiritual leaders of the earth. When these desperate and distressed frogs seek for water and life in the mouths of these, and enter therein, they find blood instead, and come out of the mouth of those who do not possess the living waters of the gospel of Christ. As the means of the economies of the world dry up, as has been explained, those people of the earth who are full of selfishness, lust, and hate, 3 unclean spirits like unto frogs, seek life from those familiar spirits who they believe can give them life. These leaders and spiritual guides, in turn, play on the desires of human nature, the dragon, and the image of worldly success, the beast, all the while pretending to administer good and sound doctrine, whether spiritual or secular, to the people. The gospel of Jesus Christ, which includes unconditional forgiveness and loving our enemies as our friends, presents the only message anyone needs to know and understand in order to be happy. In contrast, anyone who does not teach this simple message is who John has referred to as a false prophet. Therefore, the term John uses, false prophet, always represents any person who claims to be good and teach truth, but who pollutes the pure and living water by teaching anything more or less than the simple message of Jesus Christ. Even more than the spiritual gurus, false prophets, who invent breathing patterns, chakras, regions of the solar plexus, and other such nonsense, causing a person to concentrate and focus more on themselves than on how their chants and esoteric ways affect others. Ministers of organized religion give an even clearer model of a false prophet. These dress in fancy clothes, drive fancy cars, live in expensive houses, and receive incomes and stipends from their church, all the while preaching of Christ and His gospel. The message these ministers give causes their congregations to desire, lust after, the things of the world by the examples they inadvertently set for them. The followers are erroneously convinced that their leaders are blessed with riches from God because of their righteousness. Therefore, they erroneously conclude that all who seek after the same riches that a man of God possesses must surely be justified. They then believe these riches are condoned as righteous blessings of God. What these leaders fail to point out from their adorned pulpits is that Jesus Christ and His apostles had very, very little in way of earthly possessions. These false prophets preach family values to their congregations, which is really only someone's clever guise to subtly persuade any who will listen to further divide themselves into families, nations, churches, or groups, selfishness. They do this by drawing on their own precepts and doctrines, and causing great inequalities and separation among God's children, which in turn evolves further into condemning others who are not of the same family, nation, church, or group, hate. Well did Christ speak of them, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say, and do not. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries, and enlarge the borders of their garments, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. Matthew 23 verses 2-7. Verse 14. For they are the spirits of devils which work miracles, and go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, gathering them for the battle of that great day of God Almighty. The people of the earth have gained hope and strength from listening to religious leaders, spiritual gurus, self-help consultants, and therapists. The market for books, trinkets, and everything sold with the purpose of giving a person hope in a world filled with despair and darkness has become substantial and extensive. Those involved in this market do not sell their wares only for money. Glory, prestige, honor, and worldly praise are some of the other rewards these false prophets receive from those who listen to them and seek out their wisdom. The miracles they work are the gentle persuasions of the therapist's voice as the depressed and miserable seek relief, which they receive temporarily through a miracle. The miracles also come in the trinkets provided by spiritual gurus, and in the hypnotic state in which their adherents are placated through breathings, chants, chakras, yoga poses, and everything else done to relieve the sores and plagues of the masses. All these things lead a person away from the simple solution to the world's problems by the effects of the miracles provided as a substitute for forgiveness, loving your neighbor as yourself, and treating your enemy with respect and love. Not to be ignored are the businesses catering to the need for entertainment by those who are miserable and stressed by providing them with their wares. These include, but are not limited to, video games, computer games, entertainment websites, sports heroes, and the appropriately called stars of music, cinema, and stage. These all add to the flood that comes forth from the mouth of the dragon to destroy the woman who brought forth the man-child. See commentary on chapter 12. The entertainment world is a miracle in and of itself. Nothing is more effective in helping a person forget about the reality of the miseries experienced in the real world than going to a movie, playing a video game, attending a sporting event, or closing our ears with earphones that block out everything but the soothing music to which we listen and direct our attention. A person becomes lost in the emotional flood of their team winning or losing a game, in a movie presenting a fantasy world that is not real, or in a video game in which the players become God and control the virtual world that has replaced their reality. In these worlds, they create their own realities. All these things are the miracles that assuage the hurting and afflicted soul that has been taught to lust after the American dream, hate others because of their differences, and selfishly isolate themselves in a world that has no concern for anyone but the self. These are the miracles by which all upon the earth have been deceived, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. Revelation 13 verse 14. These spirits of devils have taken power over all those, the kings of the earth and of the whole world, who should have retained this power within, and allowed no one to rule over them. There is a gathering taking place, in which the words of Christ, sword from his mouth, come up against the ways of the world. This battle wages within each of us every day, as we wage a war with the desires of our flesh, the dragon. We pursue this battle by chasing the dream that we should be special and esteemed above others and have all our heart's desire, the image of the beast. The swords we use to fight this battle are provided by the false prophets. We, the distressed frogs who are feeling gnawed, cannot help but hop into the mouths of those to whom we look for water to bring us life when the river that has sustained us has dried up. The swords with which to fight the Lamb continue to come out of their mouths, because we continue to listen to their words and pattern our lives after theirs. We distressed frogs do not consciously recognize the one against whom we are fighting. Our leaders and others in whom we put our trust will continue to depict this unseen threat as our worst enemy until we are convinced by the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet that he, this one who some say is the Antichrist, is nothing but a thief who comes to take away our worldly possessions, knock down our picket fences, and destroy our families and our happy homes. Therefore, because we are distressed frogs out of water, we seek out and listen to the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. We have busied ourselves in many ways, attempting to secure our worldly possessions and protect our beloved families from this enemy that we consciously do not recognize. Who is this enemy, this threat, this happiness-robbing Antichrist, against whom we are fighting? Here is a clue from Matthew 10 verse 34, one came saying, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth, I came not to send peace, but a sword." Matthew 10 verse 34. Yes, our worst enemy sits upon a white horse with a sharp two-edged sword coming out of his mouth to slay us and take away all the glory of the world we created for our own pleasure. He slays those we love and worship: our sports, movie and music stars, our secular leaders, our religious leaders, and all false prophets. He comes to destroy the American dream. For this reason, he was referred to by Isaiah as the Prince of Peace. Is there any wonder why we must gather for battle? Have not the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet blown their trumpets and prepared us for this war? Even so, those whose happiness lies in worldly pleasures, selfish endeavors, or material possessions are justified to war against him, because the enemy with whom they will fight in this great battle admits he is a thief, and that he is coming to steal. Verse 15. If any man have an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith, Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth, and keepeth his garments upon him, lest he walk naked and see his own shame. Though John mentions Christ as a thief in Revelation 3 verse 3, he has led us into a proper understanding of what Christ meant when he said, But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. Matthew 24 verses 43 to 44. Christ's gospel robs us of our pride, our materialism, and our disrespect for others and their beliefs. He robs us of our family units, communities, nations, and borders, and makes us equal to others in all things. He robs us of our heroes, our leaders, even all those to whom we look as the quintessential example of a successful human being. He robs us of our ignorance, our degrees, our doctorates, and our worldly intelligence that creates our classes, our castes, and our divisions. He robs us of our businesses, corporations, and all other means by which the miracles of this life have divided us and caused us misery. He is truly a thief. John again refers to our garments as our works and understanding. These garments are the white robes given to all those who have the seal of God in their forehead, and who should rest yet for a little season, as has been previously explained in the commentary of Revelation 6 verse 11. He warns those who have been enlightened by the truth to keep on their garments, or they will be sore ashamed when the battle is finally over. Verse 16. And they were gathered together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. In order to understand what John is presenting as a place where this great battle between Christ and the world ensues, it is imperative to understand what the word Armageddon means in the Hebrew tongue. The word Armageddon is derived from Mount Megiddo, Har Megiddo in Hebrew. This was the ancient site of the Great Battle of Megiddo. This battle occurred circa 609 BC, between the armies of Egypt and the armies of the kingdom of Judah. The Egyptians and the Assyrians were allied together to fight the powerful Babylonians who were threatening to take over that part of the world. On this particular occasion, as the Egyptians went forth to aid the Assyrians, they were blocked by the armies of Judah at a place called vials, the way of the sea, near Mount Megiddo, Armageddon. The armies of the kingdom of Judah confronted the Egyptians at this particular spot, vials, not because Judah was allied with Babylon, but because the two found themselves face to face. John was very close to Christ while he lived upon the earth. Jesus knew of the biblical prophecies concerning his own mission and how they played out during his lifetime. Of course, with Jesus present, John was able to gain an insight into things that others did not understand. John borrows from a prophecy of Isaiah to illustrate this place where the battle between good, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, and evil, not doing unto others, takes place. The armies of Egypt, of course, represent our worldliness and the lusts and desires of the world. The armies of Judah represent the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. Remember, all the law and the prophets are predicated upon this law. Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Matthew 7 verse 12, the allegiance formed between Egypt and Assyria represents the allegiance of all those who teach anything other than the royal law. As Egypt went to the aid of Assyria, the armies of Judah blocked their way at Via Maris, creating a very important allegoric representation that John used in presenting his message. This encounter between these two armies holds eternal significance for each of us. Isaiah prophesies of the significance of this place. Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea, Via Maris, as written in the Latin Bible, beyond Jordan, and Galilee of the nations. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Thou hast multiplied the nation, and not increased the joy they joy before thee according to the joy in harvest, and as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For thou hast broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David, and upon his kingdom, to order it, and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Isaiah 9 verses 1-7. Compare this to the New Testament that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, The land of Zebulun, and the land of Nephthalim, by the way of the sea, Via Maris, beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people which sat in darkness saw great light, and to them which sat in the region and shadow of death light is sprung up. From that time Jesus began to preach, and to say, Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Matthew 4 verses 14-17, though mentioned in Isaiah and spelled out in Matthew, it is not understood by biblical scholars that Via Maris is the actual place where the world heard the word of God for the first time from the mouth of immortal Jesus, who was sent to the world with the sword of truth coming out of his mouth. As the ways of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet become more evident and widespread in the lives of the people, they are confronted by the words of Christ. Each of us has the light of Christ within us, or better, the ability to understand that forgiveness, love, compassion, and caring for one another brings more peace and happiness than our own selfish pursuits and desires. When these two values meet, our conscience, which is the light of Christ, weighs the decision to love others or love ourselves, and a battle ensues. It is the place where the words of Christ, the army of Judah, that teach us to love one another block the selfish desires of our human heart, the army of Egypt. It is no accident as to why Christ instructed John to use this particular historic battle near Mount Megiddo as a reference to the end times for those with eyes that see. How the army of Judah fared in the battle against the army of Egypt is a historic fact, whose results should put every reader on alert regarding the battle of Armageddon prophesied to take place in the latter days, and which is taking place right now. The place where our choices are gathered together, our own Via Maris, is in our own conscience. In this quiet place, the word of truth meets up with the word of the world. This is the battlefield, yes, our own Armageddon. John uses the outcome of the battle fought at Mount Megiddo, Armageddon, to explain what occurs when the battle in our conscience takes place. The armies of Egypt, lusts and worldly desires, eventually overcome the kingdom of Judah, those things not of the world which bring us happiness, i.e., forgiveness, love of enemies, etc. Later, the great nation of Babylon, the seat of the beast, rises up and destroys Egypt and her allies, the same ones we surrender to and allow to consume our lives, and sits alone upon the great sea of humanity, and rules and reigns as the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. As this world wars amongst itself for riches, glory, materialism, etc., the still small voice, or the light of Christ, blocks our actions, usually for just a few moments, before we disregard it and forget about the peace it could bring. Therefore, if our conscience be our guide, one need only look quietly within and around oneself to notice which side is winning the battle of Armageddon. One will soon recognize that those who are the most at peace and do not fight on the battlefield are the few who love all others unconditionally according to the commandments of Christ. Verse 17. And the seventh servant poured out his vial into the air. The editors, compilers, and subsequent translators of the New Testament made some major errors in the placement of John's words in the next few verses. When John originally wrote the work, there were no chapters or verses. When the task was set to divide the text, it was done according to what made sense to those who took the task upon them. With a correct translation and positioning of John's words, this part of Revelation makes logical sense as he intended. Verse 18. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceeding great. John's intent here becomes self-evident with a proper understanding of what hail is, but more importantly, with how it is formed. As the definition is read, keep in mind all that has been unfolded thus far in John's expressive symbolism. Hail is formed in huge cumulonimbus clouds, commonly known as thunderheads. When the sun shines brightly during the day, the air close to the ground is heated. Hot air is less dense, and therefore lighter than cold air, thus causing it to rise and cool. As it cools, its capacity for holding moisture decreases. When the rising, warm air has cooled so much that it cannot retain all of its moisture, water vapor condenses, forming clouds. The condensing moisture releases heat of its own into the surrounding air, causing the air to rise faster and give up even more moisture. These thunderheads contain vast amounts of energy in the form of updrafts and downdrafts. These vertical winds reach very high speeds. Hail grows in the storm cloud's main updraft. Snow and rain coexist in this central updraft. As the snowflakes fall, liquid water freezes onto them, forming ice pellets that will continue to grow as more and more droplets are accumulated. Upon reaching the bottom of the cloud, some of the ice pellets are carried by the updraft back up to the top of the storm. As the ice pellets once again fall through the cloud, another layer of ice is added, and the hailstone grows even larger. Typically, the stronger the updraft, the more times a hailstone repeats this cycle, and consequently, the larger it grows. Once the hailstone becomes too heavy to be supported by the updraft, it falls out of the cloud toward the surface of the earth. The hailstone reaches the ground as ice since it is not in the warm air below the thunderstorm long enough to melt before reaching the ground. To understand what John is trying to present, one needs to see the downdrafts as what comes from heaven, and the updrafts as what comes from the earth. The downdrafts are the mysteries of God and the eternal truths given to the world in the latter days, as has been explained as the increased technology and advancements that were kept from the knowledge of the world for thousands of years until the end of times. The updrafts are the way humankind uses this knowledge. The world is not using this great knowledge to love one another and do good, but rather to elevate one above another, like unto mountains rising above the earth, and isolate one from another, like the islands of the sea. See verse 21. As our use of this knowledge becomes self-evident through our scientific and technological evolution, we create the great hail out of heaven. Every stone becomes a portion of knowledge we have obtained. A specific portion is the definition of talent used in the parable by Jesus in Matthew 25 verses 14 to 30, and pound used in the same context in Luke 19 verses 11 to 27. Nothing humans have done to themselves will ever outweigh weight of a talent, the consequences, plagues, of the portion of intelligence they used to create money, the number of the beast. Money is the great and magical unequalizer. It turns a piece of paper into any material possession desired, large or small. It turns a poor man into a rich one. It turns a meek person into one full of pride. It turns a heart from peace to lofty goals and aspirations. It turns an innocent child into a stressed and unhappy adult. Because of God's non-intervention, vial of his wrath poured out into the air, and telling us how to properly use this knowledge of the eternal laws of nature, we use it as we please contrary to his royal law, thus blaspheming God, and causing a great burden, weight, upon ourselves. All of the world's problems, the great plague of the hail, are directly linked to our inability to create equality among ourselves. Verse 19. And after the 7 plagues of the 7 servants were fulfilled, I heard great voices, and thunders, and lightnings coming out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. In Revelation 15 verse 8, John tells us, And the temple was filled with smoke, and all were blinded from the glory of God, and from his power. And no man was able to enter into the temple because of the smoke till the 7 plagues of the 7 servants were fulfilled. But after the smoke has cleared, we hear the voices, the thunder and lightning coming out of the temple, revealing the truth and the wondrous mysteries of God. The time and season of our ignorance and the misuse of our world and each other is over. It is done. Verse 20. And there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake, and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Because of the truths that are being revealed, which start with these truths being unfolded at this time throughout the pages of this book, every house built upon a sandy foundation shall fall. This is because the very foundations upon which the people of the world have built are shaken by the truth so powerful that it creates so mighty an earthquake, and so great. The truth shall shake the earth violently, and there shall be no more borders or nations, no religions, no values placed on one human life above another, nor on material possessions. No more families inside picket fences who do not know their neighbors across the street, no more money, no more race, no more inequality. A human will never again be considered a foreigner, an illegal alien, but all will simply be a human, each equally a child of God. The world shall surely suffer in its drunken state of ignorance from drinking from the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath, or in other words, because we did not have God's intervention in our lives. John has used the expression 3 parts or third to again lead us into the concept of equality. See commentary on Revelation 8 verse 7. The world will then be divided into 3 parts according to the desires of happiness of its inhabitants, and each will be able to choose in which part they desire to live, and it will not matter in which. For all will belong to the kingdom of our God and his Christ, worlds without end. Verse 21. And every mountain fled away, and the islands were not found. There shall never again be one person or group isolated away from another in inequality, nor shall there ever again be one placed above another in a world where the royal law becomes the only law, worlds without end. This concludes chapter 16.